beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. A common video request is one where I share my methods for recipe writing. I've been planning a video like this one for a very long time and much consideration has gone into how to go about it. After much thought, I have decided to not only share my methods, but I have also added in a great deal of advice within this video to further inspire those that are interested in either starting to craft their own beer recipes or those that have already started and are looking for further hints and tips for improvement. There are a number of different approaches and these can of course be combined in all manner of ways to suit the individual. The trick here is going to be finding your own path, which you are probably going to have to spend some time developing, but I assure you that it will be very much worth it in the end. The holy grail here for me at least, and as such my end goal when I first started, was to get to the stage where I can write my own goals for a recipe and achieve them to my total satisfaction within the end beer. Your goals may well be different, but I hope this video helps all the same. So let's get started. Firstly, I want to point out that a recipe is the foundation of all grain brewing. It's where you take complete control of the beer's character by choosing the grain bill, hops, yeast, water and brewing process. You're working with a multitude of different types of ingredients, giving yourself infinite creative potential unlike some other methods available to homebrewers these days. So as such it should be the end goal for those that want this full creative freedom for their recipe writing. But where do you start? Quite simply, this is usually going to be with an idea for a beer that you want to drink or want to share with others, or perhaps both. What will differ among brewers, be they home brewers or commercial brewers, is quite simply how you get there. Let's explore some approaches, my methods and some ideas to inspire you from each section. First up is the intuitive approach. If you're familiar with beer styles, or particularly the ones that you want to write recipes for, and the ingredients, you can put together a recipe based on your experience. This method may not even include writing the recipe down. The start point would be to think of a flavour profile you want, be it malty, hoppy, fruity, and then balance the grain bill, hops and yeast accordingly. Some using this method will simply visit a homebrew store and make it up as they go along. In addition, there is a great deal of information out there on each of the ingredient choices that can be very helpful in this regard, that can be found online via suppliers' websites as well as on YouTube and then beyond. Not many brewers have a total knowledge of all ingredients, of course, and naturally new ones are popping up all the time, keeping everything fresh and exciting. So for example, let's say you're planning on brewing a basic IPA, you might choose the following. For the grain bill, pale malt as your base with a touch of crystal malt for sweetness for balance and also head retention. The amount you choose will be based on the level of alcohol that you desire and your usual brew volume. Often this will be based on a weight of malt that suited you previously for a similar IPA. In terms of hops, everyone has their preferences, but for example Cascade and Citra pair very nicely together for citrusy aromas, added at the levels you have used before and have had success with. These days adding these additions late in the boil, or just as well pull hops, is an easy and contemporary way to go that works well. Just go for a similar amount that has worked previously once more. In terms of yeast, an American ale yeast for a clean finish as well as a neutral profile to allow these hops to shine would be a one way to go, or perhaps you want to add in something that will add in more fruit flavours via esters, so then you might want to go for something like Pomona. This very basic approach works best for brewers who already have a sense of how ingredients interact, but with experience and plenty of experimentation, an intuitive approach is a great way to go for your initial planning at the very least. Some will simply go to a homebrew store and buy on what they feel at the time suits them and then go home and brew. It really doesn't have to be any more complicated than this if you're looking to brew good enough beer, but without too much fuss, and plenty of commercial brewers actually brew like this too, in this new age where a new recipe is called for very regularly. Not every beer needs to be a golden master, but you can certainly strike gold with this method too, but perhaps a little bit of luck is involved in that. Let's now look at the scientific approach. For a more precise method, simply use brewing calculators or software. These tools allow you to enter in the specifics of your recipe and adjust parameters like bitterness via IBUs, colour via SRM or EBC, and alcohol content via ABV. Some software can be free with some restrictions that may well suit you, but I truly feel that it is vitally important to support the developers of niche software like this, so I am very happy to pay. You will find recipe software very helpful in various other areas too, including important areas like grain to water ratios, mash efficiency predictions and yeast pitching rates. to just name a few. All of this ensures your recipe is balanced and your brew goes smoothly with the intended results, plus you then have a precise recipe, and when you come back to tweak for better results for the next brew of it, you will then be able to be more precisely reactive. Examples of this would be that if the beer was too bitter, then you can adjust your IBU levels. If you felt the beer needed to be less boozy, then you can adjust the grain bill evenly to keep the malt composition the same, but with less ABV. Or perhaps you used yeast that didn't fit as well as you'd hoped, and you then need to tweak the recipe to end up with the same final gravity due to the difference in attenuation rate. Brewing software makes all of this and everything else nice and fast and easy. Personally, I use Brewfather and Hop Control software. Brewfather is a jack of all trades and will cover much of what you need and then some, and Hop Control offers a more specialist role in the hop department, which I find especially useful for hop-forward beers. Let's now look at the collaborative approach where you can learn from the community. Brewing is as much about community as it is about science, so why not get involved and make more bearded friends? Online forums, Facebook groups, and of course YouTube are treasure troves of knowledge. You'll find tried and tested recipes, advice on troubleshooting, and tips from other brewers. All of this can really contribute to your recipe writing journey. On my channel alone, there are over 100 videos that can contribute to your recipe writing skills. For quite some years I was producing videos that shared recipes for specific beer styles that also included recipe writing tips for that beer style too. I also have much other content that shares my thoughts on recipe writing, just like this video does, but in different directions to this one. Feel very free to use any parts of any of my recipes as you wish. In fact, I actively encourage it. By sharing my recipes in public, it's my hope that my work will help others. I'm aware that some of my recipes are used in brewing schools to teach various aspects of recipe writing, and this pleases me greatly. Sharing is caring. This YouTube channel also has a very busy Facebook community of over 21,000 members, where there are beer and brewing discussions going on daily that cover all manner of different topics. You will find the details of this in the outro section of all of my videos. All of you are very welcome, and we have a group of very active admins to ensure that everything works the way it should. Furthermore, joining our local homebrew club is a great way to learn, as well as help others of course. Share your recipe ideas, get feedback, and try someone else's beer for inspiration and discuss it honestly and grow together. Beer brings people together from all walks of life. My own personal recipe design process, along with its inputs, is something that has been developed over quite some years within both a homebrew and commercial brewing setting, and it really is as follows. Firstly, I am a compulsive note taker. It could be that I'm tasting a new commercial beer or homebrewed beer, and that has something in it that I like, so I make a note about that for reference later on. I will then research this, consider it, and look at how I can implement it into either an existing recipe or something new. I'm not afraid to copy, and nor should you be, but at the same time make these goals your own within different variables of a recipe, if that is your goal. More often though, I find that beer recipe ideas can pop into my head within totally unrelated activities and settings, and I put all of these into my notes app on my mobile phone, which is always with me, and I guess it's the same for you too. I think it's fair to say that some of my very best beer recipe ideas have come to me during something unrelated and quite boring, when my mind will start to wander. I am also a compulsive experimenter. Experimentation is really part of the intuitive approach which this video started with. I really enjoy trying out new grain bill designs as well as new hop schedules. My approach is to try out new things on their own alongside something that is familiar. So for example, if I want to try out a new grain bill design, then the hop pairing and the yeast used will be very familiar to me so that I can understand fully the impact of the new grain bill. Naturally, making notes are vital here when running such experiments. By experimenting with grain bills and hop schedules like this, I often find that I have a stock amount of both of these parts of a recipe ready for suitable pairing. Yes, this takes a fair amount of time, but frankly in my experience this leads to the very best of results. In short, experimentation is where the magic happens. Try brewing small test batches to refine your recipes, adjust your mash temperature, try different hop varieties, or use adjuncts like fruit or spices. Take notes on every batch so that you can replicate and then improve your results. The more experienced you become, you may decide to set the bar even higher. Others may well consider you very fussy by doing this, but I've always viewed this as taking a personal pride in the quality of a final recipe, and my focus is locked onto that. I seldom find that a recipe is finished until at least 3 test batches are brewed with various tweaks along the way, but only you can decide how high you want the bar to be. Sometimes I will also decide that I want to write a new recipe to a certain beer style. I will start with taking notes on what I'm looking to achieve with this new recipe. Usually to make this worthwhile, to my mind, there really needs to be something fresh with a new goal. Examples here would be to write a recipe for a New England IPA, but to make it more cost efficient, and perhaps to write a recipe for a Guinness clone that is easy for my audience to brew, and yet very close to the commercial beer and very enjoyable. These are actually two projects that I handled in 2024. Personally, I often prefer to acknowledge the style that I am writing a recipe for early on, but I know others who consider this too constrictive and focus on the output rather than the title. However, if you're a keen competitor in beer competition, then naturally BJCP styles or similar are going to have to be the focus, as this is what these competitions are judged on. However, if we really analyse commercial beer, then quite often even the most excellent ones fall short of BJCP style stipulations. Naturally, they are excellent beers all the same. The reason I choose style is because it gets me closer straight away to an end recipe due to the style parameters like malts, adjuncts, hops and yeast of choice, along with the range of ABV, colour and water profiles. The next thing to mention is recipe project management. I have always had plenty of projects going at any one time, and I always put my recipes into brewing software, namely Brewfather, along with dates and version numbers too, so then I can track my progress and at a glance find the most recent version of any given recipe. Sometimes I may not go back to a previous recipe design if the intended tweak does not work, at least not straight away, so keeping each version of the recipe is vital. If you think this will suit you, then try it, but some will find that they lose focus if they have too much on the go, more than say 1 or 2 projects in development, so find your own sweet spot here. One key piece of advice is that you should never be afraid to kill a project, or at the very least put it on pause. Some of my personal best recipes have been on pause for some years, but then all of a sudden they get resurrected due to a new idea or a vital part of the jigsaw is solved by experimentation, and I have found the missing piece and just know where to fit it. Once I have the parts of the recipe jigsaw put together and I believe I have something worth developing further, then I start brewing test batches. I am strict with myself here in the sense that there is really no point to a new recipe unless I am happy with it. Once I reach this stage, then I start sharing the test batches with others to find out what their thoughts are too. All of the feedback then gets put together and I consider it very carefully. Fresh tweaks are then made as needed and this cycle continues until I believe a Gold Master recipe is found. I then brew a larger batch size, which really depends on how much of this beer I already have in terms of volume, and of course film this so that it can be shared as part of a guide with my audience on YouTube. To finish off, I'm also going to share some further tips that I hope you'll also find useful on your recipe writing journey. The first one I'm going to say, have patience. When you encounter a new recipe from someone else that looks interesting, I suggest that you always brew this as is the very first time. There is little point in tweaking a recipe that you have no experience of, and frankly you may well miss the golden nugget in the recipe that makes it truly special. The chances that you will strike true gold on the first rewrite is very unlikely. The chances that you will strike true gold on a rewrite without experience of the recipe is actually going to be completely zero. Embrace the challenge, but realise that patience is a virtue. On this basis, when writing recipes completely from scratch, you will face an even greater challenge, of course, especially when first starting out. Have patience. Also, if every recipe you write has just one version and then you move on, then frankly you're missing out on a great deal of the potential learning that can be found within crafting your own recipes. Having focus on improvement is certainly the way forward. Have faith. Self-confidence flows differently in different people, but you will find that the effort that you put into recipe writing will reflect in the end results. Very few people ace this early on, but with time and effort being invested, personal goals can often be reached. Have faith in yourself to do that. If you try recipe writing and find it fun, then I suggest you carry on, but at the same time if you do not get a buzz from it, then maybe this is not for you and you should simply brew recipes from others. The recipe writing journey will certainly take time, and if you're not having fun, then really it's going to be an uphill struggle to find the motivation to keep going and have everything click together for you. So there you have it. I do hope that you found this video useful. Feel free to let me and the community know in the comments section of this video. I do hope that you found this video useful, informative and interesting. If so, why not consider liking and subscribing? For further support you can join the channel's Facebook group, and if you would like to support the channel then check out the channel's merchandise store, as all profits go back into the channel. Until next time, happy brewing!